Package details President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to reveal this morning. The aim of the plan is to stimulate various sectors of the economy with the intention of creating more jobs. Now, for more on the story, we cross live to Arabile Gumede, who's at the press conference, likely to, I think, start at 10 o'clock. Arabile, a very good morning to you. We've been reporting for the better part of the morning that this is likely to be an ambitious plan. How ambitious is it likely to be, though?
Well, Blaine, it is an overcast morning, an air of expectation, and perhaps a lot touted to be a wonderful and ambitious plan, as you put it, by President Cyril Ramaphosa. He's officially arrived in less than 15 minutes' time, hopefully. He will indeed begin to announce just how he plans to stimulate South Africa's economy. This is at least the fourth economic plan we have had for South Africa in the last decade. Let's remember the new growth path, which certainly didn't see the light of day. President Jacob Zuma at the time wanted to boost 5 particular sectors in South Africa. We then had the NDP, which is still at the forefront of government and, however, has not been able to kick off the ground really, and not seeing enough when it comes to growth figures and unemployment. We also had the 14 confidence boosting measures which were set out by then Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba. And now we have the turn of President Cyril Ramaphosa to perhaps ignite South Africa's economy, having come from a recession, which we're currently in, and of course with low growth across the board, high unemployment. It's very key and very significant that he gets this done right and implement the plan.
Yeah, the president has been on this drive, isn't it, to seek investment, international investment. I think the number is 1.4 trillion rand over the next 5 years in various sectors. Have you been keeping count? I know there's been a lot of intention, isn't it? The last one we heard from Japan, about $100 billion.
Indeed, look, there are many where he is indeed touted to look at for further investment. Of course, the Chinese have been big proponents of that. Saudi Arabia, in many instances, has actually been a good proponent of that as well, with the president traveling to the Middle East not so long ago to try and enhance relations between the two nations as well. Of course, remember, South Africa is a big importer of oil, and with our fuel crisis, it may be good to indeed boost that relationship. At the same time, I think President Cyril Ramaphosa is looking across the globe, particularly not necessarily to the United States, which is going through a current trade war, but really to those nations looking for the next frontier when it comes to growth. South Africa is at a low growth trajectory, but if we get things right with implementation, with the right policies, it certainly bodes well for the local economy and can certainly help. And I think this is the right drive for the president. The problem, again, as I note, is implementation.
What about the cost factor, Arabile? What's the chances of this package being put forward being a neutral deficit neutral?
Yeah, that is the sentiment across the board, right? It is something that they have to do, whether they like it or not. The ratings agencies, particularly Moody's, will be watching as to how exactly they plan to fund this new stimulus package. It's the first time we've called it a package as well, which may include monetary funding as well. You know, there's so many ways in which you can stimulate the economy, including throwing money at the entire idea. I'm not so sure South Africa will do that. We've been a fairly conservative nation. We've been fairly dovish in a sense, and we haven't allowed ourselves to really take bold measures in order to boost the local economy. The cost is going to be one that they'll be looking out for. They certainly want to do it within South Africa's budget, and that will be the key implementation here. Do we get this done, and how much is it going to cost us in order to get it done right? Blaine, it is a critical facet of South Africa's economy, and President Cyril Ramaphosa has the tough task of convincing us that this is indeed the right plan for the country.
And it's important, isn't it, to get some clarity on the fiscal framework ahead of the medium-term budget policy statement, I think it's happening next month.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, he must have discussed this plan with Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene and, of course, National Treasury and the DG Dondo Mokgajane, who is here as well as we get proceedings underway in just a few moments, eagerly anticipating the start of that press conference. Just how he continues to relay the message across the government in order to make sure that the message is filtered through to everyone. And we're all driven by one particular purpose. As I said again, the NDP was supposed to be the big South African plan, the best way for South Africa to grow, but the bold implementation steps, the bold decisions that were needed to be taken over the last few years certainly weren't. And since 2012 till now, 6 years or so since the plan was put forward, we still haven't gotten where we needed to go. The new growth path was meant to focus on things like tourism, the oceans economy. We saw facets of that, mining, manufacturing, all of which have bled jobs. And now we get to a point where how do we actually push out the right implementation process? How do we actually get the economy pressing for the right ideas? It's not just about the plans. We've had many plans in the country. It is now about making sure we actually put those plans to work. And that is the message I think we'll all be looking for when President Cyril Ramaphosa puts this forward today.
Yeah, an offer has also been extended by business, isn't it, for the secondment of private sector professionals to government. How significant is that?
Look, at the same time, businesses will always tell you that if regulation goes in the right way and certainly helps, we're certainly willing to play our part. So business is willing to come to the fore and have been for quite some time. Let's remember not so long ago, Pravin Gordhan, as finance minister at the time, was able to garner up some support and gather what was a CEO forum of really big banks, conglomerates, companies in South Africa that are listed on the JSE as well, to come together, including labor. So that was labor, business and government to come together and give off a unified process. It was stifled at the time for political reasons, but now is the time for them to show again that cooperation between the three entities. Business will have to come to the fore. It's not just government that can certainly boost things like unemployment. It has already done that for quite some time. How now can business come to the fore and say, you know what, we will indeed be part of that stimulus package. We will indeed be the ones aiding an ailing economy, which is in a recession, and certainly technically, you know, you might say technical recession, but actually we've been in a recession for the longest time already, with population growth well over the percentage growth we're currently sitting at. It is very key, very significant and very important that we find growth well beyond 2% in order to boost what is and should be an emerging market economy as we continue to cluster ourselves.
The announcement is likely to be made at 10 o'clock. Arabile, how much detail are we likely to get? What are you hearing?
I think the right move here is to get as much detail as possible. I think the president would be remiss to leave it up to somebody else to give a much clearer message on this. When it comes from on high, when it comes from the top, it certainly then perhaps rings a lot harder to everyone else below, whether it be National Treasury, whether it be the Department of Trade and Industry, whether it be economic development or small business development. So it is very important that this message is filtered through from the top and given precise detail, dates of when things need to be achieved is going to be quite critical. Exactly how much money he plans to put in is going to be quite significant. I expect him to spend quite some time on those two things in particular, and the expectation for where the president wants growth in a number of years, particularly 2025, 2030. All those should possibly renew the growth strategy for South Africa. If he does, however, manage to take the NDP and just perhaps change that in some particular way, I don't think it's going to give us enough confidence.
Yeah, it's all about igniting inclusive, job-creating economic growth, isn't it, Arabile? Thank you very much indeed for your time. Arabile Gumede live for us, coming to, well, he's covering the press conference happening at around 10 o'clock or so, so stay tuned for that.